Axel here in the Intentional Leadership Podcast kitchen, ready for your daily dose of empowerment. In this session, I get a chance to catch up with a seasoned consultant and dear friend, Michael Tatham, CEO of Tatham Company. Mike's life purpose is to impact teams and companies with real change through his secret sauce of bringing teams together with a common language, common vision, and common purpose. Listen in to hear how Mike lives out his intentional purpose of changing this world one team at a time. Well, Mike, I often like to start these times with the incredible leader, with allowing you to showcase and spotlight yourself, because I do not want to take any thunder away. So if you could share with me and our guests today about your leadership journey into what you are doing today for this world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, we talked about this behind the scenes on purpose and like how important that is. And I feel like for I've been doing this for over 15 years now. It doesn't seem like that long, but it kind of feels it at times. Just the whole journey around purpose for me is being in that position where I think a lot of our customers are right now. And for me, it was like working at Nike. And, you know, I came out of university playing basketball and I love Nike. Still to this day, they're like my favorite retailer. It might be just part of the basketball culture with Michael Jordan and the Air Jordan brand. But I came out of university, I was like, this is the company I want to work for. I'm super passionate about sports and I want to work for an organization that I have passion for and purpose. And so I started working for Nike and I very quickly realized that, especially the position I was in, that I didn't have a voice. You know, and I had so many good ideas for the company. One of them specifically was, we're selling basketball shoes and majority of the sizes are for people who don't even play basketball. And now I understand why, but I had some ideas and I wanted to share them. And my superior at the time did not want to had no interest in that. And so it kind of was deflating. You know, I was like, oh, well, so basically I'm just coming to work every day and it's like transactional. So I very quickly learned the hard way that you don't go over your boss's head with your ideas, and I got fired. So super humbling experience. But, you know, as I started working in the family business, so just a quick kind of info on our business. So we've been in business for over 50 years. My father, as an engineer, started the business. He retired in, I guess it was 2008. And we started off as a process engineering company. It was really simple. And I think back in the TQM days, you know, it was a very relevant product because, you know, organizations were trying to figure out, especially manufacturing, how do we apply this process mindset to our business, because it's obviously a competitive advantage. And then there was a standard that I think came out of California, China Lake, California, for the aerospace and defense industry. And so anyways, long story short, our business kind of rooted from that. And my dad, being the gentleman that he is, does not like the traditional consulting model. So he decided to create a business that involved transferring this capability to our customers. And so for me, my journey was kind of an accident. You know, when I first started working in the business, it was supposed to be just in between jobs. And I got fired from Nike. I'm like, okay, I got to find work. It doesn't look so good when you're looking for a job when you just got fired and you're not working somewhere else. So I was like, yeah, you know, sure, I'll help you out a little bit. And I got sucked right into this business. You know, I realized very quickly that there were so many human elements to it. It wasn't just about process. It wasn't just about efficiency. It really is about releasing the hidden capability and capacity in an organization, and more importantly, in the individuals that reside in that organization. And so I fell in love with that like right away. I was like, oh, seeing some of the work that our clients were doing over the years, it was just incredible. So for me, yeah, the biggest piece I think in this purpose was like working for an organization, obviously family business, which kind of definitely helps. But like the sole purpose for us being, we're working with these large organizations that are super complex and so many layers of management. You know, most of the C-suite never even talks to the front line, you know, unless it's in like an all hands or something. And bringing in an offering that connects the two so quickly and then provides a sense of confidence that the C-suite has in that front line to actually change the way the business operates, and then providing that purpose, to me, was like hands down the coolest thing ever. So like, that's definitely why I do what I do and why I wanted to continue into this day, do what I do. So
Mike, what I heard was you finding your purpose, finding your voice, speaking your voice, and now giving people a voice is
Totally.
what sounds like the journey and the evolution of your purpose. Whew. Tell me a little bit more. You and our audience, because I think the intrigue here is you're talking about working with corporations on providing people a voice. What does that mean in your services and in your offering? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, there's two big components, and I learned this very quickly, is that there's tons of good ideas that circulate in an organization. Like there's no shortage of those. Where there
Like
is a big, yeah, go ahead.
like the idea of shoes that actually fit basketball players.
Imagine that. Yeah, I got size 14 feet and I can't find it. They don't even sell them in Canada. Never mind. Yes, I'm Canadian. So it was interesting because there's just so many ideas floating around. And I think there was actually, if you don't mind, I'll tell you a quick story. Someone told me this many years ago. It was a client who I learned a ton from. He told me the story of the hot Cheetos. And I don't know if anyone who's listening has heard this one, but it's super inspiring. So the CEO of, I think it's Hostess for Cheetos. I can't remember. I think it's Hostess.
So I think
Yeah,
so.
I think so. The main corporation that has that brand. They're at this time they're kind of flatlining in their sales, and they're looking for something new and fresh, a fresh idea. And he's been listening to all the ideas in the boardroom, and he's like, like, yeah, we've done that before. There's nothing's really jumping out. So he set this precedence throughout his organization that says, look, I don't care what level of the organization you're from. If you're like right at the front line, you are welcome to come into my office and pitch your idea. And you know what? It just might be the next product. Sure enough, who was it? A janitor. A janitor comes into his office one day and says, I got an idea. And he's like, okay, well, sure, let's do this. He goes, hot Cheetos. That was it. Like it blew up after that. And
The rest is history.
and the rest is history. So it's like, I think every senior leader wants to be able to connect to those on the front line and knows that there are ideas there that can, help progress the strategy and help the organization develop, not only be profitable, but develop a super healthy and resilient culture. But I think they just don't know how. And so that's really where we come in. We provide, in our initial kind of experience with our clients, is we provide an experience called boot camp. And this boot camp experience is really just an organization that's going through a transformation over what would probably be about a couple of years. And it's role playing and it's serious. And so when clients go through this, they recognize a few things. Number one, there are things we're currently doing that are preventing us from going to where we want to go. And the second thing that they recognize very quickly is, oh my goodness, there's a hidden capability and capacity in our organization that we have not released, but now we have the recipe to do so. And so that's really what we do. And we really, I hate to use the word empower, but really that's what it is. But it's also empowerment with the tools on how. Because it's one thing to go through something. I think everyone who's listening to this podcast can relate to this. If you've been through a course or some sort of learning experience, you found it very enlightening, but you're like, I have no idea how to translate this. Not to mention, if I understand it, that's one thing, but if the rest of my colleagues don't, then it's going to die before it starts. And so that's really what we're all about, is bringing that experiential learning, common vision, common language, all of those elements with the tools and techniques necessary to make like long lasting, sustainable change.
What I love is this aspect of common language, common purpose, common mission, of course, because as an intentional leader, it's about owning one's purpose or a shared purpose within an organization or team. And the power of that shared common purpose is that it's that North Star. It's that North Star, that invisible leader that motivates, that inspires, that moves everyone towards the same direction. How does this boot camp experience actually unpack that? In, just kind of what I'm hearing you've built is a process that is it's visceral. People are feeling the process. What is that actually? What's that, if I may, the secret sauce? At least just a little bit to tantalize the taste buds out here of intentional leaders just wanting to know, how do I do that? How do I impact people? What is your secret sauce within these boot camps?
I wish I could say, very good question, by the way. I wish I could say it's like a secret. But I feel like I had this conversation with my mother a couple of days ago. She's an avid reader. She speaks like 5 languages. Incredible. She reads so much. And we were just talking about the fact that there's so much literature and information out there in the world, more so now than ever. I think we can all appreciate all the information that we're pushed and pulled on a regular basis. But why is it that there's so many secret sauces out there, and yet, like success, for example, like it's written in 100 books, and it's been the same recipe since goodness, Rockefeller. So why is it that so very few people can do it? Right?
Yeah.
Because it's not that it's a secret. It's how do you break down that recipe into manageable chunks so that it's not you trying to conform or fit into what everyone else does. So each
Ooh.
organization is super what's the word I'm looking for? They're creative, but also they're different, unique. That's the word I was looking for. Every organization is very unique. Every culture is unique. The people that work in there are unique. So if you try to take an out of the can recipe for an organization to follow, then what's going to happen is they'll do it for a little while. It's like an exercise regime. If I try and do a Olympic athletes exercise regime, I'm just going to give up probably after a couple of weeks because I'm not built that way. Right.
Right.
Well, I kind of think I can do it, but I think the average person probably can't. But so that's the thing about our offering in boot camp specifically, is that there's a lot of common sense built into it that I think most people already know. And it's the
Mm.
critical thinking aspect and applying kind of a systems thinking to not just a technical problem, but also a non-technical problem. And every organization has different types of thinkers. You've got creative people, you've got more systematic people, you have those who love, the monotony of doing some type of work. We need those kind of people. And so when you bring all of them together from all different walks of life and ways of solving problems, it can make it very challenging to solve a problem.
Mm.
So the common language component is you can provide a recipe, and if I did this, it wouldn't work. And I could say, follow this recipe and it's going to give you the same outcome every time. Then they're going to say, yeah, but that doesn't work for me because this is the kind of culture I come from, the kind of environment I have, and I've tried it and it doesn't work. When you do it experientially, what they soon realize is, oh my goodness, I actually know a lot of these things. It's just the order in which I'm putting them in. And so then it becomes more about them embracing a way of thinking and putting together their own recipe instead of inheriting or taking on a recipe that was created by us, for example. So I know it might seem abstract, but really that's the secret to the secret sauce.
Yeah, taking the complex, it sounds like,
Mhm.
and then create taking the complex and making it consumable bite-sized pieces for the group is what sounds like is
Yeah.
happening here, because just knowing a little bit of this incredible boot camp experience that you've shared with me, Mike, it's these different elements that you touch when you're talking about change management and
Mhm.
leadership that is critical: communication, connection, tactical knowledge of what's going on, how is it going on, how can we fix it, that sort of thing. But it's not just one thing that will fix these large scale problems and initiatives. It's the culmination of a lot of very intentional leadership skills that can create success. And it sounds like you put this into a system.
Yeah, and the intentional part is like, don't, for all of you senior leaders out there, they're like, oh yeah, that's the soft, squishy stuff that I need to pay attention to now because everyone is. Yeah, that's not actually true. You need to because it does correlate to profitability. And if you can't see that, then you need to clear your glasses off because it certainly does. And I see it on a day-to-day basis in aerospace and defense, financial services, e-commerce, hospitality, healthcare. I've worked in all these industries. It's the same thing. It's all around human-centered design. It's all
Mm.
about getting people to follow a purpose. And as a leader, you have those who are looking up to you, or you really are the cheerleader for direction and for encouragement and all those things. And it's not just you building just the basic habits of being a good leader. It's also understanding what piece you fit in the giant puzzle of the organization and how you want to kind of build the kind of culture you want so you can be competitive and you can execute on that strategy. Right.
Yeah.
And that might be just like common knowledge you can pull out of a book. I might have just recited that, but there is an element to, well, how do you do that?
Uh-huh.
And that's the part I really love because it's actually not as complicated as you might think. The complicated part are people. If you do all this kind of work and you execute on strategy and you didn't have any people, it would be super simple because there's no people involved. But the fact that there's people involved makes it that much more complex.
The reality is, I think, well, first off, resonate completely with this element of rebranding what may have been called soft skills, because soft, that word soft, has that negative connotation.
Totally.
I'd
Yep.
like to rebrand that to essential skills. They are
Absolutely.
essential to running an organization, to making money as a business, to hitting any sort of goals and profit and revenue goals that an organization may have. These are essential skills. And so that would be my small little rebranding initiative in our leadership industry and community today, basically.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, I can't remember who said it. It might have been like Simon Sinek or one of those very influential change management leaders, but it was something around you don't hire for skills, you hire for attitude. You
Mm.
know, and the attitude piece is super important because when we inherently learn an attitude or develop a personality over the course of our life. And so if you have a specific type of culture that you're trying to mold, and then you're not finding the right individuals that have the right attitudes to fit into that type of culture, or you're going to have to change a little bit, but are you selecting the right talent to help really drive the culture you're looking for? And instead you look for skills, then that's going to create a completely different kind of culture, and it may not be the one you want. And I
Mm.
know, Axel, you've always said this, is that if you're in a position where you've got an organization and you've got all the skill sets available, but you're not getting the results you're looking for and you're scratching your head, it's probably because the attitudes aren't there.
Right.
Right.
The
And you're not
critical
intentional.
essential sauce is missing.
The essential sauce is missing. It's
That's
exactly right.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. But I want to unpack with you because I love this unpacking of what may seem as simple.
Mhm.
Oftentimes also referred to as what's common sense, right? Like, so this element of connecting with your people is important. The element of communication and listening is important. That seems simple, but I believe the true challenge in the world we live in today is the simple is actually the hardest because it's our weakest, let's call it leadership muscle for a moment, because
Totally
our
agree.
leadership muscle has built in terms of how fast can you go? How many things can you hit? How much can you move? How much, right? It's less about around what is simple, which is take a deep breath and listen to your employees, listen to your colleagues. What do people have to say? Listen and hear your clients, right? So these simple things are lost, not by intention, though. And I think that you kind of, skim that a little bit too. It's not about negative intention. It's a lack of intentionality. It's lack of, I should pause and ask my client how they're doing today.
I totally
How
agree
are
with that.
things going in their world, right?
Yeah.
So it is the simple things. Now, when you say that in terms of simple, what does that mean? What do you see in experiencing in these boot camps that is really simple to us potentially on this on the other side, and not knee deep in the day to day with our clients' operations and all that they face every day? What are those simple things you're seeing that is causing heartache to some degree?
Yeah, and I'm a big Apple fan and have been for many years. And I don't recall who the quote came from, but it was like something around simplification is the ultimate sophistication, right? And it's a beautiful quote because I totally agree with you. It's like to be able to distill something that's super complex down into its purest, simplest form, that exercise in itself is hard work. And I'll use the term because I love it so much. You got to roll the sleeves up and really get into it and focus. And what the challenge is nowadays with the pure amount of information that we consume and social media and just all the noise that's going on within an organization, it's like you say you don't have time, but really it's you have the time. It's what you choose to use with that time. And in boot camp, that comes out, right? Like you can't hide it. It's very introspective. It's like you can't hide these things. And so what we see in terms of simplicity is, yes, you have a complex problem. It's absolutely, I'm not denying that, there aren't complex problems out there. One of our clients, if you see behind me, is NASA. And NASA is a perfect example. They have tons of complex problems. And so how do you solve these problems? Well, you got to break them down. And I just feel like, and maybe it's just me, but I don't think it is, that I think that's a skill set, especially the younger people haven't really, developed enough. And I think as when you get enough of those types of individuals in an organization who are super used to, firefighting and slapping on solutions and moving them aside, and have just become expert meeting attenders, it's not their fault. It's part of the system they're working in. And I think the simplicity comes from the mindset change, which I know is one of your definite favorite words because you use it a lot, and it's absolutely true. The mindset change occurs when you take a step back and you look at everything you do as a system. Like, oh no, that's an engineering kind of term. No, it's not. It's anyone who can think of things in terms of systems. And I think what happens is one of the sayings that we have coming out of boot camp is stop blaming the people, but blame the system that they're working in, right? Because if you look at, and I can't remember, it might have been Deming or one of those types of leaders, but he said something around the effect of, if you put good people up against a bad system is going to win every time. So then why not use your talent to then dig into the systems that aren't working for them and give them that opportunity to simplify it? And if you do that, you get kind of two birds with one stone, which is you get really happy employees that get to change the environments they're working in, which may be constantly firefighting. And then you also get a happy executive team because some of these problems that keep landing on their desk are not there anymore.
Systems. It sounds like by that saying, systems are a part of the root cause of the problem. And I think you and I love this aspect of getting to the root cause, because if not, we're just dealing with the symptoms.
But Axel, I don't have time for that stuff. I'm so busy in meetings. And it's like, well, then fine. Then you got to be okay with those problems staying around forever. They'll linger. Right. Yeah.
And if not get worse over time, because as problems compound with problems, it becomes an avalanche over time. And that's truly a visual explanation of unsustainability, right? We do the word unsustainable is used so lightly in our worlds today, but the visual of an avalanche falling on us, our company, our families is what is, that path of unsustainability actually looks like. It's going to come to a point where it can no longer stand up. It's going to come down.
Yeah, it's just waiting for someone to make an echo or something that gets it moving. You're right. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely right.
Define for us what the system is in this boot camp experience. What is being unpacked as the core and the root causes within some of these breakdowns in the ability to produce a part or deliver a service offering? What are those components within that system that creates that failure, let's call it?
Yeah. So without giving away too much, I guess the best way to explain it is that there's a system that's in place, right? And I think majority of our clients, when they come in, they're not familiar with a product, what we call it is the circuit board, really, that they're building. It's serious stuff. It's an 800-degree soldering iron that you could cook a turkey. On today's Thanksgiving, you can cook a turkey at 400. So just let you know what 800-degree iron will do to your finger. So it's not a joke. There's serious stuff. It's not a game. And so this was actually how circuit boards were manufactured way back, and I guess it was the late 70s, early 80s. And so that whole business model was just transferred over to our simulator. And in fact, everything to this very moment that we've built has come out of a customer or real life example. So it's not, myself or anyone else in my firm sitting in a room and coming up with this great idea. It's been from real life experiences. And so I think from the boot camp experience, from a system side, I think what we get to do is, for those, again, it goes back to common language. Instead of looking at the business as a whole lot of inputs and outputs, which I know it is, we look at it like it's a whole lot of functions that need to be strung together to create an entire end-to-end experience. Some organizations will call it a customer journey. They'll call it a fulfillment process, whatever it is. And so they start to look at it from a different lens. And then when you start to see that it doesn't matter who the individuals are that are sitting in the seats in the silos, it's the system in which they're working together that's dysfunctional, you quickly recognize that it doesn't matter how talented that person is sitting in that seat, that the system's in control,
Mm.
right? And but to be able to understand that way of thinking, you got to experience it. And so that's where the experiential learning and going through this organization that's not functioning well, and more importantly, being given the opportunity to put the simulator on pause and then apply everything you've learned up to this point in your career that's made you successful to change the way that the output is of this organization, and it still doesn't work. At some point, you're like, okay, I understand what this means by a system that's not working and what we need to do when we go back to our organization. So that's kind of from a systems lens. Oh, we had a little glitch there. We can cut that out.
Yeah, we can. No, that's okay. That's a good glitch because I was thinking I want to move us back to your story. So let's do a little shift here.
Sure.
And so that'll help clip it right there, or like, we'll merge it in somehow. But
Sure.
Mike, your intentional leadership journey, it sounds like, you took, and I keep looking up on that saying behind you, failure is not an option. There you go. There you go. And it sounds like you lived it in your life. Brene Brown calls it face down in the arena, is that state where, we may feel a little beaten up, right? Your Nike story. But you came out of that and you embraced what that learning gave you, which was harnessing, using your own voice to empower those around you. Tell us a little more of that. That's very intriguing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a very humbling experience for a few reasons, because number one, I had never been fired before. Like, I pride myself on having a ton of integrity, and I'm very reliable and hardworking. So I didn't understand the corporate hierarchy at this point in my career. So it was super humbling to be fired. And the way they did it, by the way, was super class act. It's like, look, you can't do that. We understand you have ideas, but there's a proper channel to go through. But I just realized I'm super impatient. I want to see things move. Like, I like building things, and if they don't work, so what? Let's try something else. So that's kind of been a little bit of a software development type of mentality, I guess. But going back to this quote, failure is not an option. I don't, for those of you who are reading it behind me here, it's kind of got a dual meaning, I guess, in some degree. So it came from the Apollo 13 mission, and goodness, I just forgot the gentleman's name who was leading the rescue mission for the Apollo 13. But that being said, the whole idea was, look, like, failure is not an option. We need to get our astronauts back to Earth with time to spare. For those of you who are familiar with what happened with Apollo 13. And so I think what he meant was, like, the outcome of failure is not an option. But in terms of along the way, they had a ton of failures. They had the CO2 cartridge issue. They had the power needing to be shut down. They had a ton of things go wrong that they failed at even before launch, that they were able to recover. But the team came together in a way that was just incredible, because the mantra was, look, we cannot fail at this. We cannot lose an American in space. And as far as he was concerned, it wasn't going to be on his watch. Right?
That's right.
Right. So I think that the whole notion of failure is not an option has two meanings. It's the one is the output, just don't accept it. Just keep pushing forward. But then also there are a ton of smaller failures, fail hard, get up quickly, that'll get you to that point where, yeah, failure won't be an option, because you kind of used to failing quickly and failing hard. So
You made that so holistic, in that, in order that your end result is failure is not an option, I like to also rebrand fail fast to learn fast.
I love
So
it.
we're going to fall and stumble all the time, only to be able to learn that lesson, because without that fall, you can't get ahead of something that later will show up when it actually really matters, and you haven't learned the solution to get you over that and ahead of it so it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's so true. What I love also what you said is, it was kind of thinking back to clients, right? Like, working with different industries. They'll come up with, well, look, I'm in the healthcare industry, I'm in the medical industry. We can't fail with a patient. They're gonna die. And I'm thinking to myself, I've heard on the news that lots of patients die. Like, it's horrible. But the reality is that there are failures happening all the time. You may not notice them because you're so busy trying to fix them, right?
Yeah.
Instead of understanding why they occurred in the first place, right? And I
No.
think that's the other value that if there's any leader listening to this podcast right now, is giving your people some like actual focus time to unravel what went wrong. And if you think the Apollo 13 mission, with, by the way, NASA are some of the smartest scientists in the world, not some of the smartest scientists in the world, did they just go through that mission and then say yay and celebrate and have, you know, hot dogs and beer after? No, they spent years looking at all the things that went wrong and the chain of events that occurred that put them in that position in the first place, right? And it doesn't have to be just in industries like aviation and nuclear power and, you know, ones where there's loss of life. You can also look at it in just a simple organization like an insurance company, right? And why are all these things going wrong? Where did they come from? Why are they happening? And here's the best part: you can get your people to figure it out. You know, they're
Yeah.
smart. They're a whole lot smarter than you think they are. In fact, they're probably smarter than the executive team because they're the most important people day to day working on this stuff. And they're stuck in these systems and they are highly motivated to stop working in that kind of environment where they're firefighting constantly. It's exhausting.
Well, and I think the reoccurring and the theme here is to be able to have that intentionality and that courage and that wisdom and that conviction to pause and reflect, that introspective time that is needed, that cannot happen when we are running a mile a minute, multitasking 50 things at one time. And there is that is not there's no space for it.
Yeah.
So there is a need to create intention, to postmortems, reflection.
Absolutely.
How did we do? Where can we do better? How did it fail? What can we learn from it? Right? All of those questions that take a whole different mindset. And frankly, it's actually the other side of the brain as well. So in order to get out of that fight or flight and that do part of the brain, we actually have to take a few deep breaths and say, okay, what happened here? How could we do this better? What can we learn from it? And it's fascinating that you share that post these incredible launches, there are months, if not years, of reflection happening before the next voyage. And that is an incredible piece of information that I think as leaders, we're running too quickly to even take a moment and say, oh, wow, yeah. There is benefits that I am losing or missing with moving too quickly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just to add to that, it's also, if you know you're moving that fast as a leader, imagine how fast your people are working to keep up with you.
Wow.
You know, they don't have a whole lot of time to be thinking about new innovative ways to help your business excel. They're spending all their time solving reoccurring problems, which shouldn't exist in the first place if you really took the time to look at them at a deeper level, more than just surface. Surface analysis, anytime I have a conversation with a client, C-suite, whether it be chief operating officer, CFO, CEO, you know, any executive VPs, it's always the same thing. I'm in meetings all day. You know, I don't have a whole lot of time. I want to get my people to do this, but I'm having a hard time communicating it. They can't spend the time on it. And then it's just a cycle of hell.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like at some point, to your point, you got to be like, you got to put the brakes on. And you don't want to wait until it's too late. You want to wait until there's a talent drain. You know, attrition is like the worst thing, especially right now. It's a funny thing that during a looming potential recession, that organizations are losing people. It's like you'd think it's the opposite. Everyone's trying to get a job. But look, people are more intentional about where they want to work and the purpose that they have in their work. So you better start figuring out ways to get them more involved. And obviously not just make it about, oh, well, here's our mission statement and here's our purpose, and now go do your work in your transactional systems. No, you gotta flip that upside down and say, well, how do I get them to use that purpose to contribute back to the business? Because clearly we have to be profitable. We're not going to be in business if we don't. We have shareholders. But at the same time, you can kill two birds with one stone, help them provide that purpose, but also give them a mechanism to change the systems they're working in so they actually enjoy their work. Because the purpose will only last so long if they're feeling exhausted, you know?
Yeah. The purpose, the shared purpose, is that invisible leader. It's that self-motivating, propelling energy where when everyone in the organization not only buys in, but was a part of creating, building, enhancing, mobilizing a shared purpose, you all reach the North Star quicker, faster, more efficient, and with a lot more joy than when everyone is working in different directions, trying to move towards some unknown goal. It creates a whole different experience, not only for the organization and the bottom line, but for all the employees involved.
Yeah, absolutely. It actually it reminds me of a story, and I don't recall where I heard it because I'm bumping into so many leaders with stories over the years. I probably learn way more from them than they do from me. But there was a story, and I think it was WestJet. Correct me if I'm wrong. It might have been a different airline, but it's the airline that they like kind of use a little bit of humor. So like you come onto the airline and they're doing your traditional like safety check, for example, right? I'm a pilot myself, right? So I'm an aviator. So when I first encountered this, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. But there are some who don't think it's that funny. And what was interesting is that when and I don't quote me on what his vision was or his purpose, but I think to some element it was to kind of take a little bit of the fear out of flying, because if you do look at the statistics, the chances of an accident occur on the way to the airport in the car, not when you start flying, right? Because aviation's super safe. But there's still the stigma around, well, all these, airlines crashing and whatnot. And so he was trying to bring an element of lightheartedness and humor to his culture. I think, again, it was WestJet. And so what ended up happening is they rolled out this whole endeavor where you can, when they're doing this, the stewardess are doing the security checks, and the introductions to all the passengers, they're using jokes and like kind of goofy and whatnot, right? And some people really thought that was funny. So the CEO got a letter and it went right up the ranks, and there was a disgruntled customer saying, "I think it's highly inappropriate that you do this, and you need to stop joking around. This is not, aviation accidents are no joke, and this is ridiculous, and you need to change this." And so of course it got brought to the C-suite in the boardroom, and they're like, "Oh my God, what are we going to do? This is going to look horrible. We need to change how we operate." And he goes, "No, this is the kind of culture we want to have. So here's how we're going to respond. We apologize that it offsets you. We're going to miss you," to the customer. Right? Because, and we always say customer is never wrong, but look, if you have a culture with intentional leaders and a purpose, and you stand behind it, it's very clear the types of customers you're going to have. Yeah. And so that CEO stood up for his people, and he didn't backtrack. And I can tell you, there's a lot of organizations where I've seen the opposite, where a customer has a problem and suddenly it creates this horrible ripple effect right through the organization, because the purpose isn't there, the intentional leadership isn't there. And of course, the last part, my favorite, is the systems aren't in place, right? So it's like a domino effect. But if you can be intentional about that, and then, as you said, have that North Star, and look, you can be your customer, but let's not forget, customers aren't going to be happy if you don't have happy employees either. So, you gotta kind of deal with both of those things.
Yeah. My sense is the system creates, it creates that, I'm not going to call it safe space. I'm going to call it empowered space. I think what comes to mind, because
that's a good
when
term.
you have a system that is actually working, moving, mobilizing together, aligned, effective, known, you're creating a culture, a community, a mechanism where everyone is moving with ease. It doesn't mean that there aren't curveballs that come into the system, the need for customizations, the need to deal with other things, the uncontrollables for a moment, right, will come into the system. A disgruntled client, right? All of these things are a part of a system's existence. But when a system is clear, when it knows where the different pieces should go, how they go, where they go, when they go, the system can move, it sounds like, to that North Star, to that end goal, wherever that is, with much more ease, regardless of the curveballs that come in.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's like, I think the term was, I was told, or again, I might have listened to it from, it was what's it? It was like a Navy SEAL captain, or it was a general, one of those two. But the whole thing was like operating rhythm.
Mm.
right? Where everyone knows where, as a submarine captain, that's what it was. So, like in a submarine, it's close quarters, right? So everyone knows their place, where they're supposed to be. And more importantly, I know that if I don't do my job, I know what effect it'll have up and downstream,
Mm.
and most organizations, they think, well, the military, they're very hierarchical. Yes, that's true. But the military also operates in a flat manner during a time of war, right?
Mm.
Because if they were hierarchical, it's like, oh, well, should we, point our missiles in this direction? It's like if they had to go through the hierarchy, the war would be over by the time they fired the missiles, right? So there is an element of agility that's required, during those times. And you're right that I like that term operating rhythm, because then it's very clear roles, responsibilities, who knows where they're supposed to be. And the other element I'll pick out in what you said that I love is it's not only just about, oh, I'm a good leader and here are the things I need to do. It's also about those that are working in that system are the same ones that know what didn't make it work, that helped it make it work. So think about implementation, right? You look at all the big consulting firms around the world, like McKinsey and Deloitte and Accenture, they're phenomenal firms. But if you're wondering why a lot of their implementations with their clients fail, and I think it's like over 85, 90%, because the biggest element that's required there is getting the buy-in of those actually doing the work.
Mm.
And so they need to be the ones making the change and come to this on their own. They don't want to be told what to do. They know what to do. They're
Mm.
the experts. They know exactly what needs to happen in the system to change. They need a voice, a platform, and to some degree, a methodology to bring to the executive suite to say, look, this is how we've dissected this problem and got it to a point where it's going to become capable.
Yeah. Yeah. What just keeps flashing in my mind, Mike, is hashtag better together.
Yeah, totally.
This element that, yes, there are different, there are leaders needed, but at the same time, there are groups of there are colleagues that will need to. We're just better together. There's this element of the need for everyone to have a voice in what that means. And then, yes, a leader to make some decisions, know where they are in their roles and responsibility in that organization, in that system, to make it actually the best possible system, rhythm possible.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you use any
Yeah.
analogy. There's tons of them out there, but I think that if you
So
want to
many.
talk secret sauce, that's it right there. Is that rhythm
Ooh.
and getting the right individuals in their roles, knowing their roles, understanding how it all connects, and then driven by purpose. That's like all the greatest sports teams of all time. Look at them. That's because of their purpose and they know their roles and responsibilities. So I think it was a documentary, Kobe Bryant documentary, I think, or it was on. Oh, I know, it was the Redeem Team. It was on Netflix, and it talked a lot about why the U.S. basketball team for so many years was dominant, and then suddenly there was this spell of losses, right? And a loss for the U.S. is not gold, which makes sense because they're the greatest basketball players in the world in the United States, right? So, but the thing is, the world was changing and the rest of the world was getting better. Basketball, European basketball was getting better. It required all of some of the best players in the NBA to come together and be led by Kobe Bryant. Who else would lead that team? But then there were other players like LeBron who are also used to being dominant, but they all figured out their place because their common objective to win, right, was overpowering their individual desire to play what position they want or to be the star or whatever it is. And
Right.
so that's no different than an organization that if you can, obviously operating in a flat manner takes time and it's an evolution, but if you start with the culture and then you're able to shape that culture in a way that has everyone involved in the organization knowing their place, and knowing how they're contributing to the greater purpose, that is called an unstoppable force as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And what comes to mind is a story about a college team, a college basketball team, where their star player gets killed in a car accident. And the team comes together as the underdog of that division,
That's right.
to rise to the top in one season because they had one collective purpose to uphold the memory of that lost player on their team. And with that one purpose, which didn't have to do with a medal or standing on a podium
Yeah.
or getting to professional level or whatever their dreams were individually.
Mhm.
They had a collective purpose to
Yeah.
uphold that memory of a leader they had lost and a team member, a brother, a colleague, right? That they had lost. And that took them right to the top. And I think that story for me moves me because of exactly what you just said of how a purpose not only mobilizes you to the end state, it mobilizes you successfully beyond what may some people may seem unfathomable into the endless possibilities, because now you've got a group, a team, an organization moving in that one direction with clarity and buy-in, and that is powerful.
Yeah, oh, that's amazing. Yeah, and I can just like see it now. Like you and I, when we talk about these things, we're like eating it up. But like I could see anyone who's listening to me like, oh well, that's super like wonderful, but like how?
Yeah.
You know,
No.
and I think it goes back to a conversation we had many months ago, which is if it's an iterative process.
Yes.
It's not an overnight thing. There are, and yeah, you could pick up a million books and create it, or create a mechanism to making it happen. But if you just know the core components of it and then kind of feel it out as you go, you'll make it happen.
Yeah.
But if you don't believe in it and you're not intentional about it and you're not mindful, then you just keep doing what you've always been done. And I know everyone hates that. It doesn't matter what industry you're from. If you hear a colleague say, well, why do we do this? And you say, well, that's the way we've always done things. That's it's you want to break the status quo, you're going to have to make it a cultural thing. It's not just hiring new fresh blood to come in and ask why, because eventually they're going to do the same thing. They're going to say, well, that's the way we've done things, until you can create a culture of, well, I don't know why we do that, and I'll go find out. Who would have thought, asking a question?
Yeah. Isn't it that doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results is
Insanity.
insanity? There you go. That
Yeah.
this intentional, now the invitation here, I think your invitation as Michael Tatham and my invitation as being Axel is this invitation to take that intentional step. It is one step at a time on, and let's not call it challenging status quo, because that just creates fear, but taking that intentional step as a leader into the unknown that may feel a little bit uncomfortable at first, but that unknown provides new perspective, new impossible solutions, a different way to look at it. And that intentional step will open up the eyes, and shift the mindset, of leaders that want to create something different wherever they are in their journey as a leader, in their homes, at work, on teams, whatever leadership hat you are wearing out there, that possibility to impact change exists. It's one step at a time.
Yeah, it's actually, I think that's a great idea. I'm going to stop using that challenging the status quo, because that's kind of cliche too. But it does become more about permission to ask why in a safe environment.
Ooh,
That's really what it is.
that's
And
it.
for me in my firm, that's purpose is, as much as I enjoy having sitting around the C-suite and being able to work with some of the Fortune 100 leaders, it's fun. I learn a lot from them, but I also think that it's more fun working with those down on the front line who have dedicated, some of them, many years of their lives to an organization, and feel like they were like a sleeping giant. And then suddenly, after like 40 years of working within the company, they come to work with a skip in their step. And you're like, really? That's all I had to do was just give them the ability to have a say in what they're working in? And really, but
Right.
you have to remember, there's a certain element of legacy here. If I'm working for a big organization like Walmart, for example, and I was partaking in a team that got to completely change the way we do things, whether it be, purchasing an item online or something in store as a customer experience, like home grocery or something like that. And then, I retire or I leave the business. And then every time I see a commercial come up, I go, hey, I was part of that. So there's a big element of legacy as well that's super important, especially for the younger generations. You can't pay them enough money if you don't have a really great culture and it's inclusive, of course. and it's diverse and it's collaborative, then it doesn't matter how much you pay them. They're going to say that's not good enough for me. So
everyone's voice matters, right? Everyone's voice matters. Mike, I think we could talk for days on
it's
this.
true. It's
And
true. It's fun.
it's probably because we speak a common language.
It's true, isn't it? Yeah. We can tackle
We
any
speak,
problem.
we can tackle any problem, and
True.
yeah, we speak a common language. But I want to make sure that our audience can find you, and because I think this is a journey, and if you're listening in and you feel this is kind of your starting point as an intentional leader, I want to make sure people know where to find you. What would be the best place that folks can reach out to you and connect with you?
Yeah, I think the modern day business card is probably LinkedIn. That's the easiest. But if you're not into that, then you can visit our website at tathamco.com. And so there's a mechanism to get through there as well. I probably won't give my email over over a podcast because it tends to get flooded in that way. But
No.
yeah, I think LinkedIn's probably the easiest way. I mean, I connect with everyone. I'm very intentional about when I connect with people and that we have, authentic conversations. So if you're just curious about this or want to learn more about what our clients have done or anyone else in the world who's been through this type of journey and you want to talk to someone, yeah, absolutely hit me up.
Wonderful. All right. And I'll drop that you'll find that in the description down below. But this was always a joy to connect with you, Mike. Thank you so much for your time.
Likewise,
All
Axel,
right.
it's amazing. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, now that's a healthy dose of empowerment. Until next time, be empowered.